will also deny that we are not a communist country, even though you also read that. We have never been communist, we have never been Catholic. I think that we will never be none of those things. But this we can talk, whatever, afterwards. I know that you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning so I can sing a lullaby. I sing a lullaby song, but I don't believe I sing too well. But whatever. If you are a little bit, down, because it's normal, make questions. And then we will, do this a little bit more interactive. Okay, another interesting detail in Cuba is that Cubans have never called a Jew a Jew. We have given them different names, but never Jews. And you won't see it in the presentation. Okay, let's see a little bit the colonial period from 1492 to 1898. A lot of people are wrong because they believe that Columbus was the first man, European man, that set foot in the island. That is not true. If you read Columbus' diary, it's on the 2nd November 1492, it's in front of the place. He needed someone to explore the land, and I'm quoting, he said, I picked up the interpreter of the expedition, Mr. Torres, a recently converted Jew from Russia. First European man who set foot in the island was this recently converted Jew. We can figure it out very easily why he was recently converted. Columbus departed the 3rd August from Spain. The decree of expulsion ended the 2nd August. So in order to remain one night more safe in Spanish territory, he had to convert into Russian. And this is why Columbus quotes in this way his conversion. I would say that the Torres also allows me to tell you that Jews have not only been linked with the crucial event of the discovery of the New World, because you know that was a fact. The money was given by Jewish people in Spain. It's a legend that Queen Isabella gave her jewels. It's not true. There were 3 men, Luis de Santangel, Gabriel Sanchez, and Isaac Rabanel, the ones who gave the money for the possibility of the expedition of Columbus. But also, that Jews have been linked with the main symbols of Cuban culture. And I will show you why I'm telling you this. Okay, this is why. This is a famous cover of a cigar box in Cuba. And when the Torres was walking in the island, and this is described by one of the books of the conquerors, they say that he saw little Indians that were inhaling and exhaling smoke through their noses with something that they call cohiba. So the Torres was also the first European man who ever saw a Cuban cigar. And this is what is depicted here. This is Columbus with the hand. This man that is bowing and actually presented the cigars, the cohibas, to Columbus is Mr. Torres. And also I will add that not only the cigar, sugar is also related with Jews, because the first man that brought sugar to the island was a Jew that was called Antonio Matos, and he came from Madeira. So, main symbols of Cuba. What's a baseball? We will not do that. Yeah, the Cuban baseball stadium in Havana was built by the Maduro family, and the Maduros are Jews from Curacao that came to Cuba. And they were owners of one of the baseball clubs. Besides that, they founded the Cuban Sugar Kids, it was a baseball club that played in the United States. So Jews have been always there with our main symbols, I would say, culturally. This is a map to show you the emigration of conversos and Sephardic Jews to the New World. And you can see that the arrow is very broad. It doesn't depart only from Spain. Why? And this is the way I found it, the way that Cubans called the Jews during the colonial period. I was in Spain studying the Inquisition, and I found a document that said from the governor of the island to the kids of Spain, we need to expel the Portuguese. I said, why? You have the culture of Spain, why we need to expel the Portuguese? And I found a second document that said the Portuguese are even more than the Castilians. They were full-back Portuguese. Who were the Portuguese? Third document gave me the clue. It said, all of them are relative of people that have been tried by the Inquisition. So we were full-back of Portuguese Jews. And at the time, we only called them Portuguese. I will confess that I was really criticized in the archives in Madrid, because when I found the document that explained, finally they can expel the Portuguese, and then I found the document that narrated the expulsion, I started laughing as my sugar, and I would tell them, people told me, you cannot laugh like that, Cuban, Indians. So we did that. And what they narrated, they put all the Portuguese Jews on a boat. That was expulsion. The boat toured Havana Bay, and they disembarked again. that was the extent of the expulsion of the Portuguese Jews. You would ask me why? Pragmatism. One of the main characteristics of the Cubans, we are very pragmatic human beings. And we were not going to expel the people that were bringing money to the island. Because if you know something of our history, you will know that we were conquered. And normally I said that we were like a woman that was flattered, seduced, and then abandoned. Because the conquerors, when they found out we didn't have gold, they left us totally isolated in the island. They went from here to the countries of Mexico, Peru. And what the Cubans did to survive? They started smuggling with pirates. And who were the pirates at the time? And this is important in the formation of our idiosyncrasy. Pirates at the time were a lot of Jewish pirates of the Caribbean and a lot of infidels, Lutherans. Those were the people. So the Cubans at the beginning, since the beginning of our history, we have felt very at ease with the other. And this is one of the causes, I believe, that we are not at all xenophobic people. And this is important. We call them Portuguese. And why Portuguese? Because when the Jews were expelled from Spain, the first place they went was Portugal. They settled in Portugal up to the moment the Inquisition arrived in Portugal. And from there, they moved part of them to the Ottoman part and the other ones to the northern part of Europe, Hamburg, Amsterdam. There they became the nation again. They went back to their religion and they started trading with the New World on sugar and tobacco. And those were the Jews that we had in the island, the people that were bringing really money to Cuba. I would say that not only the symbols of our culture, but also Jews have been linked with political struggles of the island. And one day I was looking in our archives, and I found a document dated 1832. First time that someone came to Cuba to foment a conspiracy against the colonial power of Spain. And I was really shocked the moment I read this man from Colombia, Juan Ellis, and it's got it here, but it says from Jewish religion. So he was a Jew, came to Cuba, he tried to win against Spain. Also, between those two documents, I have another one I didn't bring, but I would love to refer to. It's that we had an expedition that came in 1850 and 1851 to liberate the island from Spain. And this was led by a man who was General Narciso Lopez. And I will mention two very Spanish names on his group. One is Janos Blumenthal, and the other one is Luis Schlesinger. Don't speak Spanish. There were two Hungarian Jews. So at the time in the United States, they volunteered, we need to liberate the country. They came here and they fought for the Cuban independence in that time. Here you have a newspaper, okay? That it was done by Jose Marti. I'm sure that you made your homework. All of you know who Jose Marti is. The greatest man we have ever produced in this country. And normally I say that the first Cuban American, because people believed are the ones who live in Miami. No, you're wrong. The first Cuban American was Marti. He lived only 7 years of his adult life in Cuba, 15 in New York. He matured as a human being, as a politician in the United States of America. So while he was there, he went to every single State of the Union fundraising money to start a revolution of 1895. And he went to Key West. And in Key West, he met a very interesting group of young men. One of them were Jews. And they organized themselves. They felt mesmerized by Marti's speech. And they organized themselves and founded a club, Abravanel, which is misspelling. They put it Abravanel. It's a misspelling of Isaac Abravanel, the man I told you gave money to Queen Isabella. They gave all the money they had to Marti to start the revolution of 1895. And when you will visit with Ailette, the cemetery, you will see, I told her to show you the grave of the man that founded this club, which is Joseph Steinberg. He came to Cuba, the Cubans revered him, gave him the title of honorary captain of the Independence Army because he helped Marti, and when he died, he had a full guard of honor of the former combatants of the war because Cubans were very thankful for what he did to Marti. So if you see, the Jews have always been linked with all these events in our history. But I would say that the pact of non-aggression between the Cubans and Jewish people during colonial time was good because Jews lived well in Cuba. They would never burn in Cuba. The Cubans never burned a Jew. In opposition, what you find in Mexico with the Carvajal case or the Silva case in Latin America, in Cuba that never happened. We burned Indians. We even burned homosexuals during the colonial time of the Inquisition, but never a Jew. It's an interesting thing that never happened. the bad thing of that was that we don't have those beautiful sand synagogues, you know, that you can find in the islands of the Caribbean, or those old cemeteries. We have nothing of that. But we have a group that we can recognize as Jewish people in 1898. Why 1898? End of our war against Spain. At that moment, a lot of Jewish people came as suppliers of the American army, some of them as military men. And I would say that this group was a little bit like the group. It was reformed in terms of religion. It was not orthodox as the rest of the other groups that came afterwards. And they were not very observant, I would say. They imported the robbers from Key West for the high holidays. Even though they had money, they never built a synagogue. But something happened that made them change. A woman died. She had to be buried in the Catholic Cemetery of Columbus. That was too much for the American group. They bought land, and they built the first Jewish cemetery that we have. And that is why we recognize them as Jews, because they built the cemetery. First, how we call this group. We call them Americans. It was the only name that they received because they came from the United States and they were called Americans. They were upper-class Jews, and they mixed really with the Cuban upper classes. This is only a map of Cuba that I brought in order to show you all these black dots that you see here in the backbone of the island are Jewish institutions, associations, and cemeteries that were built by what the group I call the Jews of the Central Highway. Because when they arrived in Cuba, we were building the Central Highway. And what they did, the only job they were able to find was to shovel it. Shoveling under this sun is not precisely a good job to do. So Jewish people are very quick-minded, and they decided that it was wiser to go in advance to the next point where the Central Highway was going to be built and start sending schmack to the people. That's what they did. They did that. They stored the cemetery that you can find in Santa Clara, in Camagüey, and Oriente. That was the way of the Sephardic people that came to Cuba, went to live inland and conform all these associations. This I brought it only to show you the map. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you said in the map that the Jewish community here was involved with the tobacco and the sugar. So why not they didn't settle in Pinar del Rio area? I noticed in the map that they were not.
Interesting, no. Because during the colonial time, we didn't have tobacco enough in Pinar del Rio.
Oh.
We had it more in Las Villas, in the area of San Espíritus, and we had it here in Havana, in the area of Santiago de Las Vegas. Those were the areas where the tobacco growers were concentrated. So Pinar was in. Later on in the 20th century, yes, we had in Artemisa a group of Jewish people that conformed an association that was in the 20th century. Okay, this is only the map of Havana. This is Havana Bay. And well, Jews do whatever. When they arrived to New York, what they did, the Lower East Side, run an area, cheaper to rent a space, you know, the poor, the merchandise. It was a normal thing they did here. They settled in Old Havana. This is a zoom of the area where the Jewish stores were concentrated in Old Havana. This is the way the Cubans call them, Americanos. And this is the cemetery you're going to visit, which is the United Hebrew Congregation Cemetery. I then will explain all those things. I'm only going to refer in order to stress the thing of the non-discrimination of the Cubans toward Jewish minority with this big mausoleum that you see here. It's the Philip Rosenthal mausoleum. I will make an anecdote, something that happened to me 5 years ago. I was at my home, somebody calls me, professor, went to invite you to get breakfast with me at Park Central Hotel. I wanted to talk on Cuban history to my course. That was the first thing that surprised me. Cuban, okay, I'm a historian, I can do it. I went to the Park Central, sat with the guy. I come from a Belgian family. I organized mentally. So I did 3 normal questions when I sat with the man. First one, where you come from in the States? The guy told me, Palm Beach. Okay. Second normal question, what institution of Palm Beach are you bringing? He told me, Palm Beach Everglades Country Club. Third normal question, remember I'm a Jewish historian, so how many Jews you have in your club? Bad question. Wrong question. The guy looked at me and said, in my club, never a Jew will enter. Well, my grandma still is mother up there because I stood up like a spring and told the guy, I forgot I have a previous appointment. I cannot even finish my breakfast with you. I cannot talk to the groups. I left the guy there. Why I was so outraged? I'll explain what I got of that man. In Cuba, we had a very aristocratic, posh, and elitist club as the Palm Beach Everglades Country Club that was called the Havana One day Batista, you know Batista, most powerful man in Cuba, vice president of the Cuban Republic, you know, millionaire. He wanted to be a member of the Havana Club, and he filled the application form, and the church, the board, blackballed him. He was never able to be a member of the Havana Club. And Philip Rosenberg was a member of the Club. And my neighbor, Adolf Gates, that came from Antwerp, the same hometown of my grandma, was a member of the ACT, and Koch was a member of the ACT. So we have 3 Jewish guys, members of that place, and the president of the Cuban Republic was able to be a member. You know why?
Class, he was from a very poor family.
I know. No. He was a millionaire, whatever.
Oh.
President of the Cuban Republic, no way. He wasn't entirely white. He was a mulatto. He was a mixed race person. The only sense of discrimination of the Cubans have been always focused over people that have different phenotypes. It means they don't resemble us, Chinese and blacks. Jews were white. They were blonde. They had blue eyes. They came from Europe. They were Europeans. That's a good thing to say. And besides that, these Jews had money. And in Cuba, the only thing you needed before 1959 to open every single door was being white and having money. That's it. That is why the Jewish American group was member of our high society in Cuba, and they never had a problem to relate in that way. It was not the case of the Ashkenazi guys that came during the 20s and the 30s. They didn't have money, so they weren't able to be members of this club. But nevertheless, they were members of a second-rate club, which is called the Casino Deportivo. Never segregated, not in the big one. You know, but this is how things were in Cuba. Okay, I told you that this group were not the typical Jewish immigrant. They were upper-class Jews, a lot of money, presidents of companies related with sugar and tobacco. I encourage you to tell me if you have ever seen a photo of a recently arrived group of Jewish people dressed in this. Wow. This is the American. A lot of money. We call them the ABC community, members of the American British Canadian community. They never mixed with the rest of the Jewish people that came. They helped monetarily, that's true, but never mixed. Their synagogue was their synagogue, and their institution was quite an elitist institution in that time. So the other ones were the greeners that came from the little shtetls, you know, that was not the people going there. The majority of the people were Ashkenazi, even though there were 2 Sephardi that were also members because they had a lot of money, and it was not being an Ashkenazi or a Sephardi, it was having a social status. That was that Jewish community. We have a second wave of Sephardi people that immigrated to Cuba after 1908. What happened in 1908? Revolution of the Young Turks in the Ottoman Empire. What that meant for the Jewish people that were living happily after their, since the 15th century? Well, bad things. Up to that moment, they paid in order not to go to military service. From that moment on was conscription. So if you figure out what was happening in the area in those years, one day they had a war against Greece, another day against Bulgaria, another day against Russia. It's not wise to remain in a place where every single day you have the Balkan War. So one Jew from a little, I would say, little town in the outskirts of Istanbul, Silivria, decided to come to Cuba. He sent a letter back to his family in Silivria that said that dollars rain from the trees. That started the chain migration. Every single person from that town, rabbi and Torah scrolls included, came to Cuba. They whipped out Silivria in the Ottoman Empire. So those were the ones who founded the Jewish community of Camagüey, Santa Clara, and Santiago. Those were the Jews that came. How the Cubans called them? Easy way. They called them Turks. They called them Turks or Moor, and Turk or Moor meant a Jew from Silivria and a Muslim from Syria. The Cubans never made that difference either. There were people, dark-skinned, they were peddling, selling things in the middle of the street. Turks or Moors, that's it. If they prayed a different way, we were not interested in it. So these people will started, like I mentioned, peddling. That was whatever they did at the beginning. And I will also say that Sephardic people have very good sense of humor. You know, they speak Ladino. Ladino is the ancient Spanish, and they were able to understand whatever sign they saw in the streets. And you can guess and push of all the possible streets in Havana synagogue, that's it. So the first Orthodox synagogue that we had in Cuba was built 1914 in Inquisitor Street. It was called Havana. That is the first one. I would like to be nice. Majority of you have faces of Ashkenazis. So, I'm nice. Also, Ashkenazis have a very good sense of humor, because when they arrived in Cuba and they decided to rent the space for the first synagogue, they also choose a very peculiar street. Normally I said not as awful and terrible as Inquisitor, but they put Adam Israel in Jesus and Mary's. Normally I said that at least there were two nice Jewish kids. It was not the other kind of things, but they also did that. Okay, Sephardi group had two main characteristics. First of all, they were Orthodox, not as the American group that was Reformed. And the other characteristic is interesting. Cuba is the only country that has studied the formation of Zionism started after the Sephardi group and not after the Ashkenazi group, which normally happens in other countries. It's the Ashkenazi group that builds Zionism. In Cuba, there were the Sephardi group. This is a photo I really like. It was given to me. It's a photo of a little town in the middle of the island of Cuba from 1929. And you know, we are a country of carnivals, so we parade in carnivals in floats. And this is the float that won the prize of the best float in 1929 in the carnivals of Tamaulipas. And if you see, the float name is the Queen of Turkey. And if you see the hats, those are the fests of the Ottoman part of Turkish people. And look, this newspaper is written with Hebrew characters. Ladino at the time was written in Hebrew characters. All these were Turkish Jews, Ottoman Jews. And the interesting thing is the speedway they assimilated into the Hus society. They came with our same culture, our same traditions, our same language, because they went out from Spain. So when they arrived to Cuba only 4 years after, they were already behaving as Cubans, getting on the float, participating as if they were Cubans. I mentioned the Zionism among this party group. Okay, this is the group, one of the two groups, because we sent two boats to fight in the independence war of Israel in 1947. I would say that 99% of all the guys that went to fight there were Sephardi. Even though the leadership of the Zionist movement at that moment in Havana was in the hands of the Ashkenazis. If you ask me a question, I would say ideological points of view. The people that organized the expedition were Betarim, Jabotinsky, the revisionist group of Betar. The people that leader the Zionist organizations in Cuba were Hashomer Hatzair. That was the People's Socialist from Guatemala, which is a different point of view of Zionism. When you visit the Sephardi, you are looking at the Sephardi temple group. Okay, this man, Salomon Vitrani, is the man that gave name to the senior daycare center we have in the Jewish community now, because he was one of the ones who took Israel. Okay, now we have the bulk of the Jewish immigration coming into Cuba from every single country in Europe. Poland, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Hungary, Romania. How do Cubans call them? Polacos. Polish. And that was the only way they were called. Already you have figured out we Cubans have a tiny little problem with geography. We don't have to complicate our lives. People don't know those countries, very long names. Well, there, the Polacos. That's it. And everybody became a Polaco in Cuba. They spoke in a different way, and that's it. They were the Polacos. This group had a main difference with the Sephardi group. They didn't choose Cuba to immigrate. You know why they came? They came to Cuba on account of the quota laws of the United States. Quota laws that were enacted in 1921. Finally, in 1924, the Johnson Act that almost stopped Pakistani in Cuba, which means hotel. They thought that we were a hotel 6 months, that's it, go to the United States. Didn't happen that way. But that is why at the beginning they didn't organize themselves in a tequila. They didn't. They started doing things that I find interesting. For example, this. This is a photo of the beginning of the arrival of this community to Cuba. It's the house they rented in order to put every single woman that was not married when they arrived to Cuba. They wanted to protect the morale. It's an interesting thing. They didn't want to risk perhaps the rum or the music or the weather or something that they felt it was a little bit dangerous for the morality of the young ladies. So that's a wedding in that place. Third thing they did. Another thing, they felt very nostalgic for their language, extremely. Because imagine these poor Ashkenazi guys arrived to Cuba, summer, very properly dressed, I would say, black coats, black hats and beards, and speaking only Yiddish. Imagine Cuba, nobody spoke Yiddish, so it was really more difficult the process of adaptation. Nevertheless, they did it perfectly. In only one generation, they jumped from peddling to professions. When you're Jewish people, you know that is normal. You know why? The joke of the woman that was in the park with 2 kids, and another woman approaches and says, "Oh, how lovely the kids are, how old are they?" And you know what the woman answered? "The lawyer to the Dr. Ford." So guys, you are programmed to your kids to accept in life, and that's normal, That is why in the one generation we full-backed, professions in Cuba in a very strict way. But at the beginning they felt nostalgic for the language. They wanted to write in Yiddish. And this is a mystery, and now if you live in the United States, this year they told me that they're going to do an opera on this book in New York. So I'm very interested in knowing the details. And Astrid, follow that and let me know. This man came to Cuba, spoke only Yiddish, left Cuba in 1931, and he wrote a thick book like this on this character that you see there, which is Atue. I don't know what you know about Cuban history. Okay, Atue is the first rebel in Cuban history. And why he was a rebel? He was caught by the Spaniards. They were going to burn him. He was in a pole like this. And 2 priests approached Atue and says, "Look, Atue, if you convert to Catholicism, when you die, you will go to heaven." Well, he was intelligent, and he asked the priest, "When you die, where do you go?" Both priests said, "Oh, to heaven." Atue's answer was burning. He was the first person that preferred to be burned instead of converted to Catholicism. How this man found out that symbol of Cuban culture and wrote a thick book, for me, is a mystery. But it's interesting that he did it. Also, it's very funny if you read Yiddish, I don't know, the name of the guy. It was very funny. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, the Ashkenazi group had 2 branches. I would say one branch was extremely Orthodox, and they founded out of Israel the most Orthodox of all the synagogues. They had the Shechita, they had the Kedusha, they had the mikvah, they had everything in that synagogue. But the other branch was extremely leftist. They were communist. And communism in Cuba, the Cuban Communist Party was formed by the Ashkenazi group, Polish and Lithuanian Jews in 1925. And this was a fact. What has been in other countries, in Argentina, New York, that is known. So this is a poster of a guy that was very important in Cuba. He was called Abraham Sinkovich. For the Cubans, he's called Fabio Goulart, and he was the founder of the Communist Party in 1925. He was a member of our Central Committee up to the moment he died. And he was, in my belief, one of the people that was really instrumental in the attitude that Cubans had toward the Jewish minority after 1959. And this, you will see it at the cemetery. This is the obelisk of the first martyrs of the Machado dictatorship. Machado killed 1 man. The first man he killed was called Noscayalo, and he killed it because not he was communist, not because he was Jewish, because he was a communist. So that was it. Okay, I mentioned that they really integrated and they excelled in our society, the Ashkenazi group. This is a very short street that is back here. It's called Berenasa. Very short. This size from this room is only that. And this is how it looked before 1959. If you see, this is similar, this is Wagner, this is Moses' house, this is David, this one is similar, Neiman. All of them were Jewish stores. That is how old Havana they made money, and they wanted to show the society, the well-being of the Jewish community. So they built this synagogue that we want to visit, which is the great synagogue, Bet Shalom. And normally I say when Donald arrived to Cuba, we can sue McDonald's. We invented the symbol before, even the Sunday side. So this is the Bet Shalom synagogue, and it's an interesting detail. When it was built in 1955, that Maggid was not there. It was added during the process of restoration because the architect said that nothing in the facade reflected that it was a Jewish place. She forgot, well, actually, we told the price, but it doesn't matter. The problem is that we put symbols of the synagogues, and in the streets you can find symbols that said Bet Shalom synagogue with the Star of David, Adat Israel with the Star of David. The Cuban Jews feel very safe in Cuba. Cuba is one of the few countries you can visit, push the door of a synagogue, go directly to the kitchen. Nobody will stop. In Cuba, there's no problem of the Jewish minority feel that they don't have a problem. Last group that immigrated to Cuba, the Cubans call them refugees. They came after the Third Reich. At the beginning, made it from Germany and Austria. They were like American group, upper-class Jews. They were bankers, lawyers, intellectuals. They kept to themselves. They never mixed with the rest of the Jewish community. They had their own boarding houses, their own synagogues. At that time, we had a Belgian synagogue, a German synagogue, and all the other synagogues that we had in Havana. They left entirely after the Second World War. But nevertheless, they gave us two important contributions. The first one was this factory for cutting diamonds. When my neighbor, Adolf Case, that came from Antwerp, I told you, knew when the Belgian Jews arrived, he told, well, the Belgian Jews know how to do the best, cut diamonds. So he founded the first factory for cutting diamonds in Cuba. We ended the war with 48 factories cutting diamonds. We became the first exporters of diamonds in the world during the Second World War. And this was an important contribution. And the other one was in terms of art and intellectual. This man, Ludwig Schabowitz, he came from Austria, was a disciple of Max Reiner in Vienna, and he founded our university theater. For the first time in our life, and we have to thank this man, the Cubans were able to see a performance of a Greek tragedy. First time, we have never seen that before. Greek tragedies were out of our scene. And he made Antigona